Remember the violent, disturbing detainment of U.S. citizen Dayanne Figueroa that I presented just a few weeks ago?
As you can see, this unmarked silver SUV full of masked federal agents make a turn in the middle of the street. Pay attention to the back car that appears on the right side of your screen.
Yeah! Hit and run! Hit and run! That's a hit and run! Hit and run! Hit and run! That's a hit and run! Hit and run! Hit and run! Yeah! Look, hey, watch out with that weapon! That weapon! Yo, watch out! What's wrong with you? You hit it! You hit her! Yo, yo!
Now, before we go further, DHS's official narrative claims that Figueroa, quote, used her vehicle to block in agents, honking her horn, and that she struck an unmarked government vehicle as it tried to leave the area. Keep that in mind as we see the horrors that unfold next.
What's wrong?
You hit her.
You hit her! You guys hit her! You guys hit her! What's wrong with y'all?
Y'all hit her?
Y'all bust a whole U-turn in the middle of the street!
Just ask yourself, what necessitates at least 4 armed mass agents approaching her car just seconds after a crash happened? Meanwhile, you can barely see a federal agent trying to rip Figueroa out of the driver's seat.
She ain't even do shit. She trying to go to work. She's trying to go to work. Oh, what? Y'all some crazy. Y'all got no heart, for real. No heart. No heart.
Get off!
She's a female.
Get off her right now!
You guys hit her. How you guys gonna arrest her?
Get off!
You guys hit her. Man, how you gonna arrest her, Brad?
As you see, this agent trying to block too many cameras from seeing this violent, completely unnecessary arrest unfolding in broad daylight. Bystanders who saw the entire situation unfold continue to berate the agents to let her go while saying that they caused the crash in the first place.
Hey, baby girl, you good. Don't worry about it.
Stop resisting.
Don't worry about it. We need that information, bro.
Ah, bogus as
They just gonna leave us out?
I want you to really absorb this image because this is the direct intended result of the Trump administration emboldening these thugs to use whatever means necessary to achieve their objectives. The violence you see unfolding against Dayanne Figueroa is what happens when federal agents are given a virtual green light to act as a secret police force.
Figueroa was headed to work in Chicago when these agents, without identification or explanation, violently seized her. She was recovering from 2 recent kidney surgeries. She was bleeding. She begged them for medical help. They refused. They held her for hours in the kind of conditions reserved for the most dangerous criminals, only to release her without an apology or even an explanation. You should also be aware of this other deeply troubling detainment of U.S. citizen and veteran George Retes. He's a U.S. Army veteran who served his country in the Iraq War. He should be the poster child for the patriotism this country claims to cherish, yet he was violently arrested and detained by federal agents during a raid at his job site in California.
He exited his car and tried to tell the officers he was going to work legally as a citizen. Agents then surrounded his car, banging on his windows. George, he tried to back away from the agents, but was pepper sprayed. His car engulfed. He says when he then was pinned down by 2 officers and then arrested, George was held for 3 days at the Metropolitan Detention Center in downtown Los Angeles. No charges were filed. He had no access to an attorney, and he missed his 3-year-old daughter's birthday.
Retes says he clearly identified himself as a citizen, but federal agents ignored him. They smashed the window of his car and dragged him out at gunpoint. The U.S. veteran then spent 3 days in detention without ever being charged with a crime. He was denied a phone call, legal representation, and medical care, despite being pepper sprayed and tear gassed during the raid. His family had no idea where he was or how to contact him.
Immediately after breaking my window, another agent sticks his arm through and sprays me with OC in the face. And they continue to drag me out of the car, throw me to the ground. Multiple officers takes multiple officers to detain me for some reason, even though I have OC on my face and I can't breathe. My hands are already behind my back. I have an agent kneeling on my back and another agent kneeling on my neck, all while I'm telling them I can't breathe because of the OC in my face and the tear gas in my lungs. They didn't care to listen, and they still abused their power.
You presented identifications showing that you were a U.S. citizen. They didn't bat an eye at that?
They didn't even allow me to show identification. They asked for my social security number. They asked, that's the only thing they asked for is like my social on a piece of paper and what I filled out.
So you were trying to identify yourself multiple times here, your name, where you were born, your social security number, to no avail?
No one cared that I was a citizen.
They booked us and everything. They threw us into a cell. They didn't care to check on any medical, like issues wrong with us. They didn't care about what happened to us or anything or why we're even there. They just put us in a cell without anything, phone call, attorney, speaking to anyone. They just threw us in a cell.
There's all these parts of process that happen if you get arrested for something that are required by the Constitution and by subsequent judicial opinions. You just sat in a cell for 3 days?
Yes, I sat in a cell for 3 days.
Could you call somebody? Could you talk to anyone?
No, they didn't let me call anyone. They didn't let me talk to a lawyer. They didn't even let me shower when I was covered in tear gas and CO spray and my body was burning. Knowing that I would miss my daughter's birthday, that was the biggest one for me. It's hard, if I'm being honest. Just knowing that I will never get that chance to know that I wasn't there. Wasn't even able to get her a gift. So it's a terrible feeling.
3 days without charges, without access to an attorney, without even a phone call to his family. He missed his daughter's 3rd birthday. He was covered in tear gas and pepper spray, and they wouldn't even let him shower. They placed him on suicide watch in isolation. All for what? For being a Latino man at the wrong place at the wrong time. Now that you're caught up on the facts of both of these cases, both of these victims are free from federal custody. Let's turn to what they're doing now to make sure nobody else, no other citizen, ends up facing the same dehumanization that they were subjected to. These are not isolated incidents. These are not random bad apples. The recent testimony before congressional leaders from Figueroa, Retes, and others exposes a widespread, systematic campaign of lawlessness enacted by federal immigration agents who believe they are above the law.
What happened to me almost exactly 2 months ago on October 10, 2025, was not law enforcement. It was violence, blatant racial profiling, and a shocking abuse of federal authority. That morning, I kissed my son goodbye and watched him walk into school, never imagining that it would be what felt like days before I felt safe again. The driver's face was almost entirely concealed, hat, dark tinted glasses, and a face mask. He made no gesture, no signal. Before I could even process what was happening, his passengers, other masked men, jumped out with guns drawn and aimed directly at me. They ripped open my door. One of them screamed in my face, demanding that I get out, yet never identifying himself, never asked me for my ID, and never told me where I was being detained or why. They never read me my rights. Instead, I was violated. I begged them to tell me who they were and where they were taking me. No one answered. I was shoved into the edge of a 3rd row seat, no seatbelt, suffocating body heat, and no air conditioning. I was wedged between 2 terrified Latino men who did not speak English. We were all handcuffed, unsecured, helpless, and I went into a full panic attack. I was not treated like a human being, and I was certainly not treated like a U.S. citizen, but I was preyed upon. They were proud to have captured me. I repeatedly told them that I was recovering from 2 recent kidney surgeries. No one took it seriously until I began to pee blood. I begged for help, for a phone call, a lawyer, for water, bandages, anything to ease the pain. Instead, I was laughed at and thrown into a filthy jail cell. The toilet available for me was under direct surveillance. With no privacy, no dignity, and unbearable pain, I had no choice but to use it. When visible blood appeared, their soulless demeanor finally vanished. Not out of care, but because they didn't want me to die in their custody. What happened to me that day is not an arrest. It was an assault and a kidnapping of a US citizen. I was never arrested, I was never charged, I was never given an explanation or an apology. But the damage is done, and it continues.
Figueroa's testimony is chilling. She described being in that hot, airless van, cuffed, wedged between two terrified Latino men while she was having a panic attack and bleeding from her recent kidney surgeries. She was not treated like a U.S. citizen. She was treated like prey. She said she was violated, fingerprinted, swabbed for DNA, photographed, all while she was begging for medical attention. She said she was not treated like a human being. She said, and I quote, "I feel violated. I never felt this disgusted in my life. This is the dehumanization of the Trump immigration agenda. They don't see people, they see targets. The moment you are in their custody, you're stripped of your dignity, your rights, and your humanity." The cruelty is the point. The cruelty is the message. It is intended to terrorize entire communities into silence and self-deportation. And when they lie, when DHS puts out statements claiming Figueroa violently resisted arrest or that ICE does not arrest U.S. citizens, they are participating in the cover-up. They are actively trying to discredit the victims they assaulted. The testimony and the medical records do not lie. DHS, however, lies with impunity.
I respect law enforcement. I respect the men and women who serve, but I also believe that accountability is not the enemy of respect. It is its foundation. On July 10th, 2025, I was confronted by ICE agents on my way to work. I want you to understand exactly what that looked like, not because I want sympathy, but because it exposes a crack in the law that must be fixed. I identified myself as a U.S. citizen and a veteran, but that didn't matter. Agents smashed my window, sprayed tear gas and pepper spray into my car, dragged me out. I was choking on gas, unable to breathe, while officers shouted conflicting commands even after I complied. They pinned me down, one kneeling on my back and another kneeling on my neck, while my hands were already behind me. I was first taken to a Navy base where agents collected my DNA, and after that, I was taken to a detention center and held for 3 days without charges. No phone call, no lawyer, no medical care, even though my skin burned from the chemicals. I wasn't allowed to shower. On Friday morning, they placed me on suicide watch. Suicide watch is a yellow concrete room with a concrete bed and a thin mattress. Light stays on 24/7. You're stripped naked and put in a hospital gown. A guard watches you constantly. I remained in those conditions from Friday morning until the moment I was released. My family had no idea where I was. I was released without explanation and without a single charge. That entire experience violated the very principles I fought to defend. And here's the truth. It happened because of a gap in the law that allowed it. If these had been state or local officers, I could take them to court right now and demand answers. But because they were federal agents, they are shielded by a blanket of immunity. That's why I'm here. The point is not to look backward, but forward. What can we do together to ensure this never happens again? This is not about politics, it is about principle. It's about fixing a flaw that undermines the freedoms we claim to protect.
George Retes, a combat vet, said the first thing out of his mouth was that he is a citizen and disabled vet. And what they did then? Well, they put a knee on his neck. They locked him in an isolation cell for 3 days. His testimony is heartbreaking. He said he is fighting this not to reopen old wounds, but because he still believes in the promise of this country and its flag. He's demanding accountability, not for revenge, but because accountability is the foundation of respect. But here's the truth that must be said. Everything Retes, Figueroa, and every other person held in that system are experiencing is not unintentional. It's not a bug. It's not an overlooked flaw in the criminal justice system. It is not a mistake. The cruelty, the denial of medical care, the isolation, the refusal to let a father call his daughter on her birthday, These are the central intentional features of the system. They are designed to break people. They are designed to discourage others from speaking up. The violence is the enforcement, you see. The dehumanization is the deterrent. The system is working exactly as the Trump administration intended. It operates lawlessly to protect those who carry out the injustices, the agents. It operates brutally to terrorize the targets, the immigrant community. The fact that American citizens and war veterans are getting caught in this meat grinder, it's proof that when you erect a system built on racial profiling and cruelty, no one's rights are safe. We must listen to Dayanne Figueroa and George Retes. We must demand Congress act, and we must tear down this apparatus of systemic cruelty before it consumes the very constitutional rights we are all supposed to be able to depend on.